Peace and wellness to the family. How's everybody doing tonight? Well, it could be daytime where y'all at. Wherever y'all at, y'all in for a treat. This is gonna be love language with me and my beautiful wife. We're gonna be doing an ego series, talking about some very interesting things dealing with egotism and how it damages relationships. Not just relationships with your partner, but relationships with life, relationships with in your environment, like relationships in business, creativity, just all across the board on how ego can destroy, and in some cases, ego can be a way for a boosting of self-confidence, in my opinion. In some ways, if you know how to walk that borderline of controlling it and taming it. So let's get right into it, because that's what we do.
Beautiful.
Hmm.
The number one problem that people have that prevents them from living a fulfilling life is the ego. The first question I want to ask you, my love, is how would you define the ego?
Um, well, I like to define the ego like I heard Wayne Dyer describe the ego as edging God out, like an acronym, and I like that because the ego can put you in a place of um, thinking from the lower mind, from the fleshy mind, and it puts you in a place of not being spiritually led.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of the times, what I found in life is like ego is based off three things: um, success, performance, and achievements. And those can get success being people equating like materialistic gain
Mm-hmm.
with blessings.
Right.
Um, Achievements being accolades and different things that they might think put them ahead of people in some type of way of imagery or like a accomplishment, and it could do something to their what we call ego, like you like to call it an intelligence,
Mm-hmm.
and put them in a place of thinking that they're better than somebody outside of themselves rather than focusing on being a better version of themselves.
Right.
And performance, um, going into how they perform in a sense of like competition and creativity. Like an analogy for me, as an artist, comparing it to art, because a lot of ego goes into art, I believe, and it's a thin line because you can get ego as an artist, and but also it could be a form of like self confidence and believing in yourself. But somebody can mistake it for egotism. But I feel like the separation of that is being in a state of competition and in a state of creativity.
Mm-hmm.
Like me having experience in the battle rap world, you're always in a state of like competitive flow.
Mm-hmm.
And when you're in a competitive flow, it kind of takes away from you being liberated
Mm-hmm.
because you're focused on one thing, and that's being better than that, being better than your opponent.
Right.
Even though you're doing a multitude of skill sets and showing the different layers of artistry and creativity, you're still confined in a box of like destroying or degrading an opponent.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So this gives you a false sense of increasing the ego or feeding the ego.
Mm-hmm.
But when you're in a state of creativity and when you're in a creative flow, you're liberated. You're able to
Mm-hmm.
use your imagination and go places that nobody else can go for the improvement of yourself and the uplifting of humanity rather than degrading somebody or an opponent. So it puts you in a better position to uplift not only yourself but other people,
Right.
which gives you more freedom within your creativity,
Right.
which opens you up from would put you in your higher mind which would take you away from your ego
Right.
because you're not in a performance-based competition with anybody but yourself,
Right.
and that's going to make you find out different things about yourself and let go and tame the ego. And I think you can kind of transmute that into self-confidence and
Mm-hmm.
self-determination and self-evolution. And you can alchemize that. Yeah. So that
Okay.
would be my answer on that.
Yeah, that was profound. I like how you said tame the ego. One of the things I put in my notes is one way that I was taught about the ego was through the Grand Trine Life System. And the way that we're taught about it is as a counterfeit persona. So the ego is an actual intelligence. So the counterfeit persona is the part of you that's dysfunctional. So this is an actual structure in your auric field that is created from your childhood, your upbringing, and it's tied to that all caps legal name that you have, right? This identity that you have, that is the ego. Okay? So this is the pain body. Okay, so that is all attached to what the ego actually is. It is an actual structure, right? And so a part of the human experience is to conquer the ego, right? Through evolution, spiritual evolution. Okay, so the next question or the topic that I wanted to bring up was on our personal experiences with our own egos. And just, I really want to ask you first. So, what is your experience with the ego? How are you able to minimize it and tame your ego?
All right, I'm gonna go for. I really want to hear yours though, so I'm gonna be quick because I'm. But an experience with me. Uh, so I was talking a little bit about in our book, a tool for spiritual development, dimensions of consciousness, about an entrepreneurial ego that I developed, and I developed an entrepreneurial ego because I began to stop appreciating the process because I found myself, and the reason why I labeled it an entrepreneurial ego because I would within my entrepreneurship journey, I would be working certain gigs at sometimes, and maybe I might pick up a part-time gig, but I will always find myself while trying to figure it out, like on my journey,
Yeah.
I will always find myself to be at these jobs saying stuff like, "Well, I don't have to be here. I can leave right now.
Yeah.
So I'll clock out. It's no problem with me."
Yeah.
You know, um, and I found that I saw that pattern in myself, and then one day I was in meditation, and when I was in meditation, something kept saying, look at your work, look at your work, look at your work. And I didn't know really how to interpret it or take it at the time. But then when I went back to my part-time job, I started paying attention more to the system on the job,
Yeah.
and the way that they functioned, the way that they had a systematic way of gathering information, the way that they did payroll, their employee handbook, the principles that they stood on. They had a whole system on how to run their business that was based on moral compass. Now, that's when I realized that, oh, wow, I had a realization that, okay, I was really in my ego because this is really a part of my process. And if I pay attention, this could actually help catapult my business that I'm building right now.
Right.
Because they had their system that they had in place. If I just studied it a little bit, I probably could apply some of these principles in an affiliate link program
Yeah.
that may help people go feel like they're in the system to be able to buy. They basically had a format to where like they can be a part of your brand and get a percentage or a commission off selling your products while promoting your brand. So they're basically would be able to be in a position to make money off your product, but with an affiliate link with a discount code. But I saw that by looking at a job I was at system.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? So with me letting go of my entrepreneurial ego, I was able to see and enjoy the process I was going through with figuring things out on my entrepreneurship journey. So that was a for me for that was a real big hurdle for me to get across because I really was stuck on like my job needing me more than I needed the job, and I was correct. But it doesn't mean that I couldn't still be the best student and learn something from
Right.
me going through that process of being at that gig instead of being in my ego so much like I got value. I got stuff to do when I get off. I got stuff to ship. I got e-commerce, but you're still here for a reason. It's something that you need to learn as an entrepreneur.
Yeah.
You know, so that was an experience for me that with the ego that I had a breakthrough actually with that. So but what's up with you though? I'm curious to know what's an experience you had with the ego.
Okay. Um, so I love that you said that. I like how you talked about that experience. The one thing that was really that I always reference with myself was the biggest false belief I had as it pertained to the ego was I really believed that identity that was created from my childhood. So it's like, okay, when you're born, this is your name. This is your mother. This is their name. This is their father. You are a part of this bloodline family. The false belief I had was that I was actually that person. But there's two versions of myself, right? So that version of myself is the part of me that's dysfunctional because it is a part of me that holds me down to my lower human nature. But then there's a God like me that's according to my DNA that is truly who I actually am. So it's really letting go of that identity through experiences, through spiritual
Oh
evolution,
wow.
and that's really how I reference it into where I am today.
Would you say that's why some people can't let go of the nostalgic self-image of themselves? Why they always bring up something that they might have did in the past, like, yo, you remember when I had the best Jordans in school, and like I had the ill crossover with the car with the rims. You remember that, right? You remember I was the man. I was the. That's ego, right?
Right, because we have to look at it from this perspective that those experiences bond you to those people and those memories that associated with that version of yourself. But the point of life is to perpetually grow. I think it's very strange if you're in your 40s and you're talking about when you were an adolescent. That's very strange. It also it in a sense that it's strange that in a sense of the context that you're bringing it, like, do you always bring it up because you haven't lived life past that, or are you just trying to bring it up for referencing a lesson?
That's a great question.
you know
Yeah.
so it's important. Context is important, yes, but I just say that to say the point is to continue to evolve.
Yes. That's one of the ways I knew that I was going through a state of evolution because I wouldn't be in I stopped. I dislike nostalgic people. They would bring up things about me from the past, and I would just be looking at them like,
Yeah.
"Nah, I really don't remember that."
Yeah.
Because I just kind of felt like with me letting go of whatever memories that they had of me in that phase of my life, they was associating that with success, and I no longer did, or they was associating that with some sense of status, or
Yes.
some sense of street credibility, or some sense of and I had let that go totally so much to where it gets me in trouble because I'm so in the now,
Right.
and then they look at me like I'm acting funny, like, oh, you acting funny now, you don't remember that? It's like, nah, it's not that, it's just like I'm just so present,
Yeah.
you know.
Right. And that's the part of the ego because you live in the past. That's how you know someone is in their ego. If they're living in the past, you're in your ego. That means because the only thing that is actually reality is the present. In the present, that is what's actually occurring. So for you to be living in your mind in the past and in the present, you're in your ego,
Yeah.
which is self-sabotaging. It's not going to allow you to evolve. So I want to get to the next point, was one of the things that I had learned on my spiritual journey was from high spirits. They said the antidote for minimizing ego is humbleness and sincerity. So I've always kept that with me. You know, you're never beyond growth. That's the beauty of life. That's how you become closer to the creator. It's infinite.
Yes.
Growth is never beyond you,
Yes.
you know.
Yes, I agree. To intertwine those both of those sections of questions and answers, I wanted to say I agree with the being genuine, humble, and vulnerable being an antidote, because what in my experience, what would happen with me with somebody like a past like me would be people will use that against you.
Right.
People will say, well, no, I don't trust you because of what you did before. Because they're still living in the past.
Right.
So they'll try to drag you back down there with them.
Right.
That could be a trigger. That was used to be a trigger in gaslight for me. Sometimes I would let them know that it was. Sometimes I wouldn't. As I grew spiritually, as I grew within,
Right.
I was able to control it better. But, based off of how I was, they would use maybe a past time that I fell short, or something that I did in the past, and they would say, well, nah, I don't feel comfortable with doing that with you now because of what you did back then.
Right. Yeah, that's an injustice, because the point of creation is growth. So that's why a part of the creator made it that you can't live in the past. That's a part. So a part of the Grand Trine Life System, what we learn is the 3 tenets: do not live in the past, do not possess your mate, trust the opposite sex. Do not live in the past is an important one, because these are laws in the universe, meaning that the point of existence is to constantly change and to constantly grow and become something different. So if you hold on to the past, you are actually working against nature. You're actually working against natural law, which is a violation of it in and of itself. So when you work against it, then your life shows it.
Maybe that's why a lot of people that suffer from some sort of depression, not all, are in their ego.
Yeah.
Because it's like we was talking about earlier, like past depression, present anxiety sometimes,
Yeah.
and future peace, new future peace, because in the now you're creating your new future, so that can kind of go back and forth. But in the past, if you're holding on to that,
Yeah. Yeah.
that means you're in your ego,
Yeah.
which means you're depressed. So a lot of people that are depressed are in the ego. You have to let that go to get past depression sometimes.
Yeah. And that's the point, because it's sensitive, right? Because to really get through something, you have to experience and allow yourself to feel through it. So that's why people can get into depression, because I've been there, filling voids with addiction, alcohol, drugs, smoking. I've been there, right? So that's how people can really get stuck on that, because instead of allowing yourself to really confront and deal with the things that are causing you pain, you try to push it aside, and you are doing these things to fill the void. But I came across this mantra that said the root of suffering is the avoidance of pain. So to avoid pain is the truth of how you're actually suffering. You have to allow yourself to confront the things that are very painful for you, and that's how you actually release them. So to an extent, you could be holding on to things that are causing you unnecessary pain, because you have the capacity to release it. But that's the point. But you're putting yourself in suffering.
What are some ways one could conjure up the strength to face some of the things that cause them the most suffering? What are some ways that they could do that, you think?
Finding the God within. You have to get through one of the major false beliefs that we are taught in Grand Trine is that humans today are taught that God is external. God is internal. So if you're not feeling the presence of the omnipresence within you, you're going to lack a sense of meaning and purpose in life. Something's going to be missing. So you're going to try to fill that void because you're not experiencing the creator within. But the truth is that we all have the divine within us.
Yes.
But the thing is free will, right? So the creator doesn't even do this. You have to recognize the God within you. Not even the creator can make you see that. You have to see that.
That's for free will. You know, that's an interesting point. That's what we was talking about earlier today about how a lot of men get in the ego based off sexual immortality and how they can't get past some of the thoughts of another man penetrating their woman through idealism of possession
Yeah.
and things of that nature. And then, you know, we got to talking about how if it was in a scenario where, you know, my wife was in a room with a millionaire, with an attractive millionaire guy who was clearly attracted to her, and she might be attracted to him, and I'm there, and how would I feel about that? And I was like, you know, we were talking, and I said, well, to be honest, you know, as a man, the most important thing is a valuable, purposeful life. Therefore, he would be secure in understanding. That's why I'd be so grateful for me being into the greatest asset of human existence, which is health and wellness and well-being, because I know majority of the time I'm the most valuable person in the room.
Right.
Not just because I know I have a skill set in it, but also because of the self-love that I've unlocked within myself.
Right.
So therefore, if just because a person has materialistic gain on this physical manifestation,
Right.
it doesn't mean that a lot of men are you know, because we're going off of status and we're going off of, you know, resources or money, materialistic stuff, right?
Yeah.
But what about the priceless assets of life? As a man, if you're secure within that, within your value, within your most valuable, priceless assets of self,
Yeah.
then I would feel like the richest person in the room. And it went, and from that point, you have to think, well, that would be their loss. But that's why I feel so grateful when we was talking. And I think might be a little bit biased with me because I have been blessed to be in a space to where I am trying to improve people's wellness and I'm trying to help people become their own healthcare systems and heal.
Yeah.
Because that puts me in a secure, purposeful position. I feel like it puts me in a power positioning, so I wouldn't feel insecure in a situation like that. You know, but that helps me with ego. But men deal in ego in that way because men are we're you know we're you know, it's about status sometimes with men, and it's about, you know, it's hard for us to fathom another man having sexual contact or having maybe it could be a possibility that their partner might want sexual contact with another man based off what he has.
Right.
Or are you thinking about this man because he has riches and money and this house and this stuff because I don't have it, and and then now it's like, are you thinking about this man? And it's like, I think that all goes back to understanding how and having a security within yourself in a valuable purpose.
Yeah.
And knowing your purpose as a man and knowing how valuable you are, so you don't even have those type of thought patterns when it comes to your partner. But that male ego,
Right.
that male ego comes in and is like, he think he can have my woman, or he might can have my woman, or she might be thinking about him. Well, if she's thinking about him, then that means, well, let me ask her about that because nah, ain't no way, can't nobody have my woman, can't nobody take her away from me. Instead of,
Right.
if my woman, if she chooses to be with another man based off those things, then that would be ultimately a bad decision because I'm rich in creativity. I'm rich in character. I'm rich in integrity. I'm
Right.
rich in all of these priceless attributes, love, loyalty, passion. Then she can go risk being with somebody with
Right.
materialistic
Right.
gain that's going to perish and mean nothing.
Right.
But a lot of the times as men, our ego, we lose sight of that.
I mean, that's a good point. And one thing I wanted to say, because this is a big part in our relationship and why it's successful, is because we do not possess each other. So that
Yes.
allows for more love to come in because we're loving each other unconditionally. Right? So I had put that there because when you possess someone, you stop growing, right? And it's coming from a place of insecurity, lack, and scarcity. And it's not healthy for man or woman, right?
Right.
So when we was having the conversations on practicing a polygamous family structure, we're talking about a functional heterosexual poly, right? So something that we do in Grand Trine is called spiraling. So what spiraling is that you can use a surrogate to help raise the relationship. Okay, so you have two couples, right? And we're elevating enough, but then we hit a limitation with our spiritual evolution. You can involve a woman to come in to add in something that we need that can help elevate us. So let's say that she can add in a value because she have gifts with wealth or attracting resources, right? She can come in, you and her would spiral. It raises up the spiritual evolution of both of us. And then on my side, let's say that we're trying to raise the intellectual, logical planning of what we're doing with our family, like incorporating more of understanding law and things that we're trying to incorporate with our community. We may incorporate a brother into this spiral and we spiral. It raises our relationship and spiritual evolution of each individual. So this is practicing functional heterosexual poly, right? What I do not support in my community is, okay, a woman is here, she's added on, and then let's say she says, I want a man because he has another woman, so I want another man. Well, you said first, that's no, because it's not community centered. That decision, you wanting to do that, terminate family contract. You
Right.
remove from our community because
Right.
that's a cancer. Because you're operating in feminism. So no, that's ego, right?
Yes.
Because the ego is self-centered. It's not community-centered. So that is working against community development, right? So that's what we're talking about. So the next part I wanted to talk about with that was our experiences with ego in relationships. So one thing I wanted to center this on with myself is the way that my ego has interfere with my relationships is one, self-sabotage, right? Your ego is always going to try to sabotage your own happiness and what is actually in the best interest of you becoming your highest and greatest self. It is part of the human experience to conquer the ego to get in alignment with your higher self, right? So you have the lower nature, devil nature, and you have the higher godlike nature, right? Your animal-like nature is always going to be working in competition with that, right? You're not in competition with anything outside of you but you. That's your competition. That's your problem. Your number one problem in life is your ego.
That's right.
That's just a fact. So the other thing I had to realize was learning accountability in the sense of it's self-empowering. So changing my perspective on what accountability is. So I read this in a book when I was getting more into entrepreneurship about accountability as being taught as something negative. Like when you're in workspaces or even in school, they teach accountability from a negative predisposition. It's like take accountability for, X, Y, and Z of how you're doing and these negative outcomes, right? But if we look at accountability from a self-empowering state, you're taking ownership for your life. You're saying that nothing outside of me can take my power in creating what is meant for me in my life.
Yeah.
I am my own miniature God. That's taking your godhood back. And then the other thing that impeded my relationships was victimization, because I grew up in poverty, right? I grew up in Detroit, impoverished areas, right? Victimization was a big thing I had to get over. Making excuses, right? Victimizing. I'm always the victim in every situation. That does tie to accountability. I can't look at my involvement in me creating these situations or my part in how the relationship is turning out, right? And then I did used to possess, right?
Yeah.
So
I think
possession,
we all did. At
that's
one
a big
point.
thing, right? So I used to possess. So this is the big thing. So going back to, so I did all this stuff prior to coming in contact and learning in a Grand Trine Life System. So through that, I learned, okay, these three things. If I do these three things, and I really am serious about aligning myself to this, embodying this truly every day, I know I'm going to get better at embodying them. So again, do not live in the past. Trust the opposite sex. I have to trust men. And do not possess your mate. Once I got to a space where I was able to completely stop possessing men, that's when I truly fell into my femininity. I was not fully feminine without that. It didn't allow me to fully understand men completely, because I was only loving men on the condition that they would only want to be with me only. So then it just blocked me from truly understanding men and their desires and what they truly want, and understanding male psychology, understanding and being empathetic to what men go through in society. It was cutting me off from all that. And the reason that that is useful and helpful for me is because you have to work through the opposite sex to achieve your divinity. One of the big things about my life is orgasm. So I'm like, okay, that's directly correlated to my level of compassion and love for Black men. So I have to get deeper into this so I can experience greater orgasms.
I think that with masculinity too, because I wouldn't have been able to get out of my emotional ego without getting emotional intelligence. I wouldn't have been able to get out of possessing women without getting an emotional experience of truly being unconditionally in love.
Right.
Which put me in a position to understand, like, okay, when you truly love somebody, that means that what we was talking about with polygamy, in my opinion, I feel like men should go into it with an open heart of their woman wanting to maybe one day be into polyandry. Being it puts you in a fair positioning emotionally.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? Because if she might not even never want that, but to be open for it emotionally with your woman, it puts you in a good position in your masculine, because
Right.
it always is going to check your value and say, well, if she decides to do that, then that means that I trust, for one, I'm going to trust her for a good reason. It's a good reason behind it. She comes to me with this. Maybe it's something that I'm lacking that I'm not giving to her. And that's in a good way. Not saying lacking in a way that you don't have it. Maybe a resource,
Right.
a skill that a brother might have that I could bring to the table, or I could contribute to the community to lift it.
Right.
Whatever the situation is, right? And then on the other end of it too, it could be you thinking to yourself like, well, it would hurt me. I'm gonna let her know that it would hurt me. But if this is truly what she believes that she needs in her life, then I'm gonna allow her to do that. But I'm also gonna let her know, and allow her to know, like, hey, well, you know, this is hurting me, and I feel like you're leaving something of value behind. You're forgetting and putting limitations on your value package over here that you have with me. I'm gonna let it be known about that, because I feel like in your security as a man, masculine, sometimes you have to say that and be secure in that,
Right.
and not just on your inner dialogue. Say it out to yourself and say it out to your partner
Right.
to remind them.
Right.
But it's all that goes into emotional intellect, because as long as you're able to express it and communicate it in a healthy way
Yeah.
and manner, and that shows a strong level of masculinity, of
Right.
divine masculinity,
Right.
because you're able to express your emotions like a man, like
Right.
a real man, and be gentle with your woman,
Right.
and still be vulnerable,
Yeah.
and still be open. It's okay. Just because you express your emotions, it doesn't make you right.
Right.
And that's another thing that we have to understand. It doesn't make you right because of how you feel,
Right.
but it does make you right with expressing it the right way. Express it the right way. Take the right approach when expressing and communicating how you feel. That's what makes it righteous.
Yeah, that's really profound, and that's one of the most attractive things about you to me, because when I vetted men for marriage, I found that, and I only dated black men, right? And so I found that it was a common denominator with this possession piece, because it was blocking them from a certain level of their godhood. And I watched this video. It just came to me with spirit, because I realized I kept running into this. I never desired more than one man, but I do Tantra. I'm a Tantra practitioner, so it's a part of my work. So I realized that a man could literally try to block me from my destiny because he possesses so much. So it's very interesting, because I watched this video with this brother, and he was talking about how this false belief that goes around that men are territorial, so that's why they do that. Well, that's a false belief when it comes to women. In the video, he was explaining, yeah, be territorial with your car, with your land. A woman, a living, breathing soul, she doesn't, you don't possess her, right? You don't own rights to her soul. That is so wrong. And there are spiritual consequences for doing that, And so when I watched that video, and it really changed my mindset on, okay, this is a problem. I cannot be okay. That has to be a non-negotiable in my relationship. I cannot be with a man that possesses me because he's blocking me from my destiny. That's wrong. And that's crazy, because you would block yourself from wealth, enlightenment, godhood, just because you couldn't get over that. This is what we're saying, that like what I was coming in contact with. And so that was one of the most attractive things about you to me, and I truly can feel it when I do Tantra on you. Your level of masculinity is so potent because of this thing that even the most intellectual brother I have come across still cannot have mastered that. It is very impressive and profound to me that you have been able to master something that I have seen men who even practice Tantra or even into high spiritual like information in books can't get through. They can't get through that, but they can get all this information and knowledge. It's crazy. The other thing that does go into the last point that we were going to talk about. So our experiences with ego and my femininity and your masculinity. So you touched on this a lot, which I thought was great. One of the things that I want to talk about with my ego was my ego really put me in a state of always feeling inadequate when it came to my femininity. I just internally did not feel like I was feminine enough, and I felt like I didn't have the best examples of femininity around me, or like feminine women. So I just felt like I was lacking internally. So it was really impeding me from growing and from learning from other women, because I kept having these feelings of inadequacy. And I think the best way to really get through it, what we were talking about, was finding that godhood within yourself. So finding what is special and being secure and confident in your own God-given talents, right? So I found the God in myself, and I can hold my space for my gifts. Okay, I'm an oracle. I have spiritual gifts. I have spiritual gifts that are what can be difficult for a typical human with the spiritual stuff, I have that on lock. I can do that very easily. I understand it very, so okay, so another woman, she may be good at baking, right? Or painting. Never compare. Why? It's not necessary to do that. That comes from a place of lack and scarcity, right? So I also realized that culture played a significant part of that too. So I realized that I put this in my notes. So adapting feminist ideology, right? That definitely was a part of my ego. So the construct of my ego was in part of feminist ideologies of being in the West, right? So self-centered, the I, you don't understand community, and then it puts you out of alignment with your femininity because to really embody feminism, you're so focused on the male female dynamic, you cut off from the full spectrum of femininity. So that was a lot that I had to overcome. I had to reconstruct myself with femininity, and all those answers came from within. But I think the main thing was understanding. One, I had came to the conclusion I held a false belief about me being a woman and hated being a woman. I thought it was easier to be a man in this world because of my upbringing. I thought that being a woman, because we have periods and all this stuff, religious trauma, Eve being the first sinner. I'm like, well, why do women even exist if we're condemned for our existence? These false beliefs that women are meant to be in pain. And we were just talking about that. Just the lifestyle I live today with all the orgasms and the great herbs and, you know, beautiful, beautiful things that we do together. I was like, I had a painless menstrual cycle, but why? It's because of lifestyle. Your thoughts can make
You
you,
hear that, ladies?
yes.
Painless menstrual cycle, great premenstrual mushroom coffee. Also, my wife has something great for y'all coming too. Just wanted to plug that in. Go ahead.
Yep, that's good. Yes, exactly. Because this is my healer. And I had my first painless menstrual cycle, which is very rare, right? But my life is filled with so much joy and so much love. Your thoughts can be connected to your cramps, right? Just how you think. The feelings that you hold in your heart towards men is connected to the pain that you feel during your menstrual cycles, right? Because all illnesses originate in spirit first. It's a lifestyle change, right? So that's what I said. Let go of all that feminist stuff and experience orgasm.
That's right.
Experience love with a black man. It's a beautiful thing. So I just wanted to talk about that. So what's your experience with ego and your masculinity?
Um, Definitely not understanding a woman's emotions. Um, I had to go back to some emotional traumatic situations in my life. Did some deep rooted subconscious mind shadow work to be able to go back to emotional times in my life where I fell short, which was playing out in my life now in the present. And I found that out through a relationship, gaining emotional intelligence through a relationship that I went through, and I felt emotions that I never felt before. So like from there, I realized that I wasn't really in tune with like the black woman within me. I wasn't really in tune with what emotions was really about. I wasn't really in tune with how to properly be there the best way that I could for a woman that was in need of emotional support. And I found that by way of shadow work and meditation. And I went back to a place where my mom was, she was in distress based off of police had came in the house and searched and basically violated the house. And I remember afterwards seeing my mom crying, and she didn't know that I seen her. and I didn't do anything. I was just stuck and like, watching her cry, and I didn't console her, and I suppressed that in my subconscious mind, and I had to go back to that time to find out why when a woman would be crying in front of me, I couldn't really do anything but speak into her. I wouldn't know how to console her. I wouldn't know how to do that.
Yeah.
And I had to find out why, because my ex brought it to my attention that, yeah, you spoke to me, but you didn't hold me, you didn't console me. And I had to find that place of emotional trauma to be able to move past that and ascend emotionally, which helped me spiritually too. But that put me in a position of like getting out of my emotional ego, thinking that I know just because I'm speaking into somebody or just because I'm there giving her a pep talk that I'm really there emotionally supporting her, and that wasn't true. I really thought that I was doing something.
Right.
So that's what emotional intelligence is really about. Emotional IQ is really about understanding that you, just like with anything with knowledge and gaining and learning, you know nothing.
Right.
Continue to try to strive to keep learning, especially with emotional understanding and balance. It's always going to be something to learn. It's always a new level of love. I'm always finding a new level of love. So that was part of the ego I had to let go of, thinking that I was emotionally in tune, and I wasn't.
Right.
I wasn't. And that's why I feel like that's probably, I agree. That's one of the main flexes that I feel like I have is doing that work.
Yeah.
It really helped me out a lot in so many different ways in my life. So, yeah.
Yeah, that was beautiful. Yeah. Well, this has been great. I mean,
Yeah.
like I said, the main thing that I can give, this is divine wisdom, God's gift to planet Earth that came through that came through the Grand Trine Life System. If you don't remember anything, remember this again. The 3 things that you can work on daily to become the highest and greatest version of yourself, to make sure your soul is in the driver's seat and your ego is in the passenger seat, is 1, do not live in the past. 2, trust the opposite sex. 3, do not possess your mate. All right, it's been real.
It's been real. Peace and wellness to the family. Hey, look, y'all go to the website, www.mysupremewellbeing.com. This will be launching tomorrow on the website. Rich Rising Mushrooms Coffee. It consists of lion's mane mushroom, cordyceps, turkey tail, cocoa, and sea lion cinnamon. Listen, this is going to take care of your bloating, your digestive, your premenstrual. This is going to do wonders for your focus and cognitive functions. It's also great for your immune system with the turkey tail. Turkey tail is great for your immune system, your white blood cells. Oh, we got the saline cinnamon, which is great for blood glucose levels balance. Anybody that's dealing with hypoglycemia and diabetes, please step right up to the plate, and we're doing a promo code Mushroom7. Mushroom7, you will get 10% off. Go to the website, www.mysupremewellbeing. Do not miss out on this sale, on this discount, because this is going to be a really good product. Also, you can put this in your coffee. All you coffee drinkers, you won't want to crash. You don't want to crash out. Put you a tablespoon of this mushroom coffee in your coffee. You get a balance. Bring the acidity down. Bring the alkalinity up. Peace and wellness to the family.